back everyone to another episode of Did You Know Doji, and it's a little too hot for a hat today, so I'm not wearing one. But the main reason that we are all here, it is time for another album review in this March Madness. It's time for a review of the new Death Grips album, Jenny Death. Now, if you don't already know who Death Grips are, they are a California trio hailing from Northern California, consisting of MC Ride, Flatlander, and Zach Hill. Now, Death Grips have been around for a good while now. I believe they first started around 2011 with their first mixtape type of album deal called Ex-Military. From there, they would go on to create The Money Store and No Love Deep Web. And then they would also go on to create Government Plates, which is a very experimental album in my opinion. Definitely not one of my favorites, but definitely very experimental in sound, which is very appreciable. Now, Death Grips are usually seen as a experimental hip-hop trio, ranging from sounds such as punk rock, industrial, of course hip-hop, to other types of rock, which makes them very inaccessible in a sense, I would say. They're not very easy to show to your friends and be like, yes, you'll love this. It's either, for me, I feel they're either hit or miss. Either people will like them or people will not like them. There's kind of no in between for them. But with that being said, they have definitely made an impact in the world of music today, especially with their album Ex-Military and The Money Store, which some people kind of see The Money Store as their most accessible album. Like, they feel that it's one album that most people can enjoy, not will, but it's very enjoyable. People can adapt to that one. But many things have been going on with Death Grips in the past couple of years. The fact that they had apparently broken up and showing this picture on their Facebook, scrawled across a napkin saying that, you know, we're at the best that we could ever be and we're just going to break up at this point. Before that, they had released one part of their two-part album, which they have now released the second part of that album called Jenny Death. And now apparently Death Grips is no longer broken up, and apparently they're going on tour right now. There you go. However, much weight and I guess you could say tension has been built upon the release of this album, Jenny Death. Also, the creation of the term Jenny Death Win, the release of their little instrumental album, Fashion Week, which the tracks ended up spelling out Jenny Death because there's a track called like Runway J, Runway E, Runway N, things like that. So, with all that being said out in the open, let's get into the actual album. How does Jenny Death sound after all this wait? And honestly, I'm going to take you through it, track by track for the most part, and basically just breaking down how I feel about the album. Now, the album starts off with a song called I Break Mirrors With My Face in the United States, and it's definitely very punching. It's very heavy, very good way to start the album off, a very heavy in sound. Just some MC Ride starting off with I break mirrors with my fist in the United States, and then this drum type of beat that's going on and also instrumental in the background. That sounds just very good way to start off the album. It wasn't too boring, wasn't too off. It wasn't off. It felt very good. And then from that song they go into Inanimate Sensation, which had already been released as a single prior to this. And honestly, I don't know why. I kind of liked it. I thought it was okay as a single, but when I heard it on the album, for some reason I liked it even more. And I wasn't sure. I had to definitely go back and listen to hear the single again. For some reason it sounded just a little bit different to me on the album, which I found to be very, once again, enjoyable. I thought it was very awesome to hear them go and do this kind of different type of sound for them. Not too different, but a little bit different. You have MC Ride going through different types of not vocal cadences, but rhythmic cadences while he's doing these different types of rhymes over the song, kind of showing you how well MC Ride is able to adapt to different types of beats and whatnot. Well, not really beats, but instrumentation, which I will get into talking about a little bit later in this review. And then from there we go on to the song Turned Off, which is pretty awesome to hear. Like, I think this is kind of like the first time I've heard Death Grips kind of sound like they're on a straight ahead beat, if you will. Like, the drums aren't very sporadic, but they sound almost like a song that a good rock song, a classic modern rock song that you hear. There's definitely, you know, constant movement on the hi-hat and bass drum and snare instead of kind of like playing these, you know, primal type of beats, which is actually very interesting to hear them over. And then they go into one part of the song where it's just purple guitar and where the song just goes, which I hadn't heard since, you know, ex-military on Cutthroat. And I don't know, something about it being thrown in right there just sounded so genius to me. I was just like, it kind of pumped me up, if you will. And I thought it was very awesome to hear. Not only that, but you know, it was just an awesome track overall. The instrumentation, the way MC Ride was over this, and you know, certain points where it's kind of just like broken down instrumentally, I felt it was done very well. And then we go on to the next track called Why Ain't That Lullaby, and I was just kind of like, I thought it was going to be a pretty funny and interesting track just because of the title simply, and it was definitely very interesting. MC Ride, at least I'm pretty sure it's MC Ride, is kind of doing this strange vocal work with there. It seems like they're throwing like some type of robotic type filter over it to make them sound a little bit different. I thought that was pretty interesting for them to do. I wouldn't say it's unexpected from Death Grips, but it's definitely something I'd say I wasn't expecting at the time. But it definitely sounded very well for what they were trying to go for with this electronic type of sound on the song. And then after this song, we go into the song Psst, Psst, which was very intoxicating for me to hear. It's just melting in my ears because the instrumentation is definitely very weird for it. It's kind of got this, I can't even describe it in my words. It's in words. It's not necessarily like guitar, but it's just some type of electronic sound where it's just like, and then you know, you kind of have MC Ride doing this type of almost like a whisper type chant, just going like, pick up the pace and go psst, psst, psst. It's just, it's so very weird and strange, but somehow very addicting to hear. It's probably one of my favorite tracks on here, next to another track, which once again going track by track, so I'll get to it eventually. But it was definitely a very interesting track to hear, and I thought it was done very well and executed very well by Death Grips. So from there we go on to the, I guess you could technically call it the title track, since that being the title of this 2-disc masterpiece, The Powers That Be. And it was definitely, just the way it starts off, you know, you got MC Ride like, I can't know what I'm about to do. And you know, you definitely hear MC Ride going back to his type of primal vocal style in this song, you know. And then he goes on like with the chorus just like, I got the powers that be. You know, you feel the energy that's supposed to be there. And you know, definitely knowing that the fact that they're going on tour, it would definitely be really interesting to hear this song live and to see what type of energy that it brings. So you know, for that track, you got my approval of as well. Now from here, I'll talk about the next 3 tracks because I feel they kind of, in a sense, blend together, more so because of their instrumentation, not necessarily because of their sound. But we go on to Beyond Alive, Centuries of Damn, and On GP. And once again, playing back to that whole focused instrumental type of beat. Like, it's more straight ahead, you know? It's not sporadic like their other stuff has been. You know, the types of beats not being straightforward, you know, not really having a, I can't say they don't have a time signature, but you know, you can definitely tell, you know, playing a very normal type of beat, more normal type of rhythm. Very interesting to hear. And these songs kind of sound very, how do I put it? Put together, very coherent, which is very interesting to hear because I'm used to them having such a sporadic type of style, very I can't say unfocused, but unforward, if that's a word. Unforward, like it's very all over the place, which is not a bad thing to say about Death Grips, but it's just very interesting to hear. And then one of my favorite songs on here, my other favorite song, On GP, which if you read the lyrics is actually a very deep song. I mean, it's being called one of Death Grips' most depressing songs, and it seems like at this point, like especially when you get to the end, you know, MC Ride talks about, you know, seems like he's talking to this person, which I believe is Death actually, because he says, you know, I live down the street from you, you've noticed me, but I've never seen you. And, you know, he kind of goes on to say, you know, like, you know, I'm waiting for you, just like hurry up and get it over with. But then, like, kind of like in the lyrics, it's kind of like Death handing him his scythe and saying, you know, it's been nice knowing you, Stefan, but I'll leave you here. And almost kind of a sense of like, you know, he's kind of like been having this desire almost for Death, but Death's basically saying, you know, it's not gonna happen, so get used to living this life. And I don't know, something about when I read those lyrics, I was just like, whoa, it's very, very morbid but deep but very interesting. So it definitely made On GP one of my favorite songs from Death Grips so far. Seriously, like, probably, I can't say it's like my favorite out of their whole entire collection, but it's definitely going to be up there after hearing this. So from all of those, we go on to the last song, Death Grips 2.0. And when I saw this, I was actually very intrigued. So I was like, Death Grips 2.0, like, what is this supposed to signify? And I was very interested to hear what the lyrics were going to be. But funny enough, there were no lyrics for this song. It was straight instrumental. Definitely very interesting to hear. Not that instrumental tracks are anything new for Death Grips, but it was just very interesting to see, like, what does this technically signify? Is it signifying that there's a new path for Death Grips going down? Since technically, I guess they're rebuilding themselves, and since they did say that they broke up and weren't doing anything, does this mean, you know, we're dead as Death Grips the original, but we're moving on to something bigger, being Death Grips 2.0? I don't know, only time can tell. But as far as instrumentation goes for that track, definitely very interesting. Definitely had a futuristic type of sound, which kind of brings on that type of ideal that I have about, you know, this being Death Grips 2.0, moving on into something bigger and better. So I'm definitely interested to see where Death Grips is going to go from here. Now, let aside from all the instrumentation, talking about things like that, well, I guess we're more so going to talk about the instrumentation. What I feel about this album is that it's probably Death Grips' most coherent album. I will say that much. Like, I feel maybe, even if you're not a fan of like Death Grips, not a fan of a heavy sound, you might like this album. You might. I'm not going to promise you anything. You might find this album interesting. It's not as crazy in a sense as their other stuff, but it's definitely more normal, I guess you could say. I can't think of a right word for it, but it's definitely more, it's more, like I keep saying, straightforward, you know? Like, the way the way Zach Hill is playing on these songs, his drumming, it definitely sounds like a drumming you'd hear in, you know, an average rock song, you know? Definitely you have your hi-hat, your bass drum, and your snare, and any other type of fills that he's trying to do on. But also I feel that it's just done so well in a way that it doesn't sound like they're trying to make themselves sound more accessible. It's definitely done in a type of way that it makes them sound like they're still trying something new for them, but it's definitely coming off very well done. If anything, I'd say it sounds more like a average punk, maybe metal album. More so because of MC Riot's vocals, because he's still going over it in a rap type, a rap type cadence. So that's why I feel it sounds still kind of like a combination of rap and metal, rap and rock. I've heard comparisons to Rage Against the Machine or any other type of new metal. So, you know, if you're interested in that, maybe you'll like this. So, in my rating of Check It or Chuck It, come on, you heard me sing my praises of this album, check it out. If you're not a fan of Death Grips, check it out. If you are a fan of Death Grips, definitely check it out. I'm sure you'll love it. But of course, I am Doji, now you know. Sorry if this was short, but I definitely felt this was a very concise review. I felt that I could get very straight to the point about this album. And, you know, plus it's only 10 tracks, so what do you want from me? But of course, love you guys. Thank you so much for watching.